What is up, guys? Fatal82 coming at you with another episode of A Day in Rust. This series takes a look at vanilla free-cam Rust footage from the Rustopia servers and takes a look at a day cycle in Rust. Getting us right off the bat here, we have some players who have done some amazing artwork, but they are woken up by the sound of fire, by the sound of flames burning, but it's not the fire inside their own base, it's rather a fire standing outside one of their high exterior stone walls. At first, the origin of this fire was unknown, but then raiders started to appear on the rocks. They were perched up with their crossbows, ready to send bolts as soon as the defenders opened their doors. So, as it was expected, it was raiders who had started that fire, and that fire does a nice job on those high exterior wood walls, or any wood building part for that matter, so it'll stay there and burn as long as it's staying on the ground. The raiders also have access to a rocket launcher here, so this is going to be a base that is going to be very susceptible for this mid-game Rust raid. As the raiders take the wall down here, they're going to have some fire coming back their way by way of bush. One of the defenders is perched in a bush here, ready to send some shots back at the raiders. As soon as the raiders were able to dispatch that defender, notice how they used a flamethrower to manage that landscape and lay down some standing fire in that area so that if the defenders spawn back in, they won't be able to get back in that bush and give the raiders grief. So they're using that flamethrower in a very effective way, which is to control the landscape, and that's really fun to see. We don't see the flamethrowers used a lot in vanilla Rust. They're used more in early game footage, but it's really nice to see it put to use here and used very effectively. As always with raiders, when your base is under siege, never go to your front door, and this is why there's two people camped here, one with a pipe shotty and one with a pump action. If you open the door, you will absolutely go down in that scenario. Even if they don't have the best aim, the spread of those weapons will take you down. So we won't know how this plays out. We're going to move on to the next vignette here, the next scene. But the defenders are perched up here in some defensive positions, ready to take some shots at the raiders and hopefully keep their base. Who knows how it plays out? Let me know in the comments below who you think won that encounter. Moving on over here, we have a group moving out in some very distinctive colors here, and this is B-Chills and his group. They're moving out in formation through the forest here as the day sets in Rust. And as they move out, they encounter another group that is almost of equal size, perhaps a little bit smaller. And as soon as these two groups meet and start exchanging fire, both sides throw down those high exterior walls. So the high exteriors go down almost instantly. Take note of that. That's a best practice that you guys want to use in PvP encounters. If they're used just like the old wood barricades in Legacy, throw them down, hop behind them. You have a place to shoot and shield yourself from fire. Knowing though that that's a tactic that's used, players do adapt, and B-Chills and his group are first in class in doing that, and they rush around those high exteriors as soon as they're placed down. So you barely have time when you're fighting this group to take aim from those positions before you have members coming around the corner. And as you can see, that was effective. B-Chills and his group did roll over the other group there, so that was an effective tactic. Moving into a ragtown here, we have a ragtag group of players. Some are naked, some have some early to mid-game gear on, and they all have melee weapons. Some have access to a bow. This is very interesting because this is a group that looks like it came together rather organically. They ran together and players started grouping up. You'll see here that players that don't assimilate with the group are summarily executed, or players who transgress the group. As they move through this Radtown area here, they encounter a group that is smaller in scale that comes up from the hills. And this group, you'll notice they're all in the same color, so this is a clan. As they move up and encounter this larger ragtag group, notice that the odds are against them. They're out in the fields here. The ragtag group has access to more defensive positions, shielding themselves within that Radtown. As they run out here, the members who are coming up, the clan who was coming up, stops and sort of takes note and moves back out, but they continue to exchange fire, and then they make a rush back into that Radtown. They're taking fire, but they're also bandaging themselves, but they're pushing back in. This is a tactic like B-Chills and his group are using, where they're just going to keep pushing forward even though they're outnumbered by the other group. Notice as they move in here, they execute every last member that they can find of that ragtag group that organically came together. So it's really interesting to see that, and I thought that that's an interesting illustration of how larger groups aren't always necessarily, the ones who are going to win. Smaller groups can come in, and with more cohesive teamwork and better communication, they can be the ones who will win that day. Next up, we have some savages who are offline raiding a base. They are helping each other to boost up into a base that they pickaxe through, and they are looting and despawning items here. They're taking away the spawn points, and I don't know the motivations for the raid, so it might be just to achieve loot, or it might be to move these people out of the area, or it might be to take over the base, or a combination of all three. But offline raiding is an effective strategy. I know it's not the most noble one in a lot of Rust players' minds, but it is the way to ensure that you get the best access to loot before it's despawned, so can't knock the players for doing that. The fog has lifted and we are moving over to one of the monument areas. This is the globe monument, or the sphere. The black man had his white friend killed. It was his traveling partner, and he's met up with another person here who he's hoping to replace him with that dead friend with. And original hashtag's a bit apprehensive. He pulls out a pipe shotgun. It looks as though the black man is throwing him some items to appease him or to lure him over. But notice that right here, some fully geared players, or better geared players rather, rush out of the woods right over original hashtag's shoulder. You can see him come out of the woodwork there. And they roll over the two players here, so their mating ritual or whatever was occurring wasn't able to come to fruition before they were rolled over by a couple players in some better gear. Moving on over here, we have another what looks like offline raid. Some players are using the standing fire with their melee tools to hatchet their way through the base. An attack chopper is overhead, but it doesn't take note of the raiders. They are shielded from the vision of that attack chopper by being in the base. I was hoping it would catch sight of one of them, maybe through the opening in the base, and start raining fire down upon him. Instant karma, instant retribution for offline raiding the base. But it didn't happen, and such as Rust, it is something that doesn't always go. It rarely goes as you would hope that it would, or would sometimes predict that it would. But that helicopter, Dirt McGirt had plans for it, and he is trying to lure the helicopter over as it flies over the dome monument. Dirt's going to have a base that definitely can take what the attack helicopter has to throw its way. The attack helicopter is a very formidable opponent, but with bases of this size, they'll be able to absorb the damage rather effectively. The fire won't affect the stone and sheet metal the way that it would for the wood. Some of the wooden pillars, if they have any, might be affected more by the fire, and the members won't be able to use the base too much once it's bukkakied with the napalm, which we'll see in a moment. So it does affect the way that the attackers are able to move through the base, but overall the attack helicopter goes down pretty quickly here, and it was within under 10 minutes that it went down, probably more like 6 minutes or so that it went down. So very quickly, once the attack helicopter is over here, Dirt and his men were able to use positions to take it out with minimal casualties. The biggest thing with the attack helicopter you have to watch out for, guys, if it gets in your base to deployable items, it can burn through a lot of them and damage them. And bodies, it will eat them up quicker, the fire. So if you have any loot, it can despawn a lot quicker if those fires are going on. So that's something that you guys want to be aware of, and it's a good takeaway from the footage. It's nice to see an attack helicopter battle. There's no doubt that DMG's making short work of the attack chopper in good time here. One thing to note though is we don't know how much damage the chopper took prior to arriving at Dirt's base, so it might have been softened up prior to arriving here. Not that it makes that much of a difference, but it's just something to take note of. As the chopper is finished off here, notice that the majority of the chopper does end up outside of Dirt's compound, but some of the loot crates and the fires do end up inside his compound, so he's able to get some loot all to himself that he doesn't have to worry about, and he can just worry about defending the loot outside from raiders who might be attracted to that location, or other players who will come to the flame like moths to flame. Moving on over here to our last vignette, we have a player with a very creative name of Fresh Pussy here, who is moving in on a player who's running. He's naked, and it's unclear if Fresh Pussy is a nice player here or what his intentions are. He does appear to give the player he was running up to a chance to say something. He does stop for a moment and then starts hacking away at him with a machete. As he's doing that, a naked player runs out of the bushes here who also has a machete, but Pussy switches over to his pipe shotgun and is able to make short work of the naked with the machete. I was hoping the naked would win just because I always root for the underdog in Rust, and it's kind of brutal to see a geared player go down with a machete. But Fresh takes the machete from the naked player here and runs down to a beach where he encounters another bald black woman. The bald black woman chases Fresh Pussy across the beach where another naked meets up and joins in the melee here. Make no mistake, guys, there's no certainty here that the player with the pipe shotgun will win. In fact, it's often at a disadvantage with the reload speed when you get two players smacking you in the head with a rock. You can go down very quickly in Rust from players who are naked on the beach with rocks, so it's something that you cannot ever underestimate. It did look like Pussy did give the player a bit of a moment there, the first one rather, a chance to stop before they were running his way. So I'm not sure that he's in all, what his intentions are as a player. We don't know why he was chasing down the naked at first. It may have just been for game, it may have been for sport, or it may have been for a reason that he had that was his own personal reason. But he's definitely a baller. As he runs back to his base here, he's chugging a water skin as he's also filling it up, going back into his base. And he has achieved what all Rust players hope to achieve. He's lived another day, he's kept his gear, he's been able to invest some resources back into his base and make some of the stone walls sheet metal. And that's all we can ever hope to achieve in Rust, is to survive another day by whatever means are available to us and that are in line with how we want to play the game. As always, guys, really hope you enjoyed this series A Day in Rust. I consider them moving screenshots, and I spent a lot of time editing them, so I hope you enjoy it. As always, guys, had a lot of fun. Fadeaway82, peace.